We have our first round of playoff action set for the weekend. And Kyle Ledbetter, I have to ask you, who's under the most pressure? Got a lot of great choices here.
Okay, so this specific weekend, the most pressure is Sean McDermott and Mike McCarthy because they should both win these games. But if they do lose these games and blow that opportunity for the Bills and Cowboys, that is a fireable offense on the spot if you lose these games. A 7 seed has still never beaten a 2 seed. That is a true fact. The NFL's had 7 seeds now for 4 years. The 7 seed is 0-6 against the 2 seed. So if you're going to be the first, especially with all of the smoke and fire that's building under the seat of Mike McCarthy and all of the, with Sean McDermott, you just might look at those two and say, you just got to not crap the bed this week. So those are the two that jump to mind first and foremost.
My most under pressure heading into this wild card weekend, Nick Sirianni. Eagles are just absolutely imploding at the tail end of the season. We mentioned it before. We mentioned it last week. I didn't think we'd get to this point with Sirianni so quickly coming off of their Super Bowl run, but now a lot of people are looking at him as the CEO head coach and wondering, what exactly do you do here? Because you're not play calling. You're bringing in the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, and you bet wrong both times. And you bet wrong miserably on your defensive coordinator because Desai didn't even make it through the season. You know, Matt Patricia out there writing on his laminated note card with a pencil, Matt Patricia as your defense coordinator. And if you get blown out by the Bucs, because they could get blown out potentially by the Bucs. If you told me his seat is hot, I'm not going to be surprised. With the Philadelphia media, that should be expected. I mean, if the Eagles get trounced in this game, trust me, the first thing I'm going to be looking up on YouTube is Philadelphia Eagles media content just to see the implosion that was, just to see the firestorm of conversation that is going to be coming from Philly that night. Because, yeah, I think Nick Sirianni heading into this playoffs, especially after a 24-0 beat down by the New York Giants and losing the division that you were running away with, yeah, believe me, he's under a lot of pressure.
Okay, so I'm really personally disappointed in the Eagles, and I think it's a great pick by you. Great pick for most pressure going into this week because Sirianni is obviously, his seat is warming up. But I was just thinking about this because I'm personally disappointed in the Eagles because after they lost to the 49ers, I said if the Eagles are the 5 seed and they have to play at Tampa for a road playoff game, you're telling me Tampa can't beat them in that game? And now it's not even trendy to say that anymore. I was saying it when it was going out on a limb of saying the Super Bowl champions were going to lose to Baker Mayfield's Bucs. Now it's like the pick to make during wild card weekend. I'm so disappointed. I could have sounded so smart, but then the Eagles totally fell apart, like worse than even I imagined they would fall apart after Dom DeSandro versus Dre Greenlaw.
I got another under pressure. Tua. The Dolphins have really come apart here in recent weeks. And the fact that they've struggled against winning teams, playoff teams, and Tua has not looked good in any of those games, going on the road to Arrowhead this week, I think he needs to at least look good. I'm not saying the Dolphins have to win that game, although it would help him out greatly. But if Tua doesn't look good in that game, I think the Dolphins might start making decisions behind the scenes as far as what their future at quarterback is and how they proceed to move forward. We've seen it before with Sean McVay and Jared Goff. Sean McVay said Jared Goff isn't good enough, isn't going to put us over the top, and they moved on to Matthew Stafford quickly. Tua doesn't even have a contract yet. So if Tua doesn't look competent in this game, then I think the Dolphins are going to start having those internal conversations.
So the Tua one is interesting. Also, the last point I had about the Eagles is, isn't Matt Patricia like a rocket scientist or something? Like I've seen that buyout he got from the Lions, man. He should go do something else at this point. I don't know why he's still here. But the point with the Dolphins is an interesting one because at the end of last year, the point that we had about Tua was that Tua looked very good when he was healthy. And that was the point people kept saying over and over again. When he was healthy, when he was healthy. The problem was will Tua stay healthy. And this year, Tua was one of 2 quarterbacks in the AFC to play all 18 games because Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes sat the last week of the season, which obviously wasn't injury related. So it's not like, oh my gosh, they, didn't make it through the season healthy. But 2 quarterbacks in the AFC played all 18 games. It was Josh Allen and it was Tua. That's it. Those are the only 2 that made it the entire season. And what's so interesting is that we still feel like we don't have the definitive answer we're looking for on Tua, despite the fact that he was playing all 18 games this season and led the NFL in passing yards, and was third in QBR. And yet most people don't feel confident in Tua as a long-term quarterbacking option. I feel like he's under less pressure going into this game, despite the fact that it's a road playoff game at Kansas City. Is his entire team is hurt. Everyone except him is hurt now. Tyreek Hill missed a game earlier this year and is clearly still playing through injury at this point. I mean, he was limping off the field in Buffalo, so much so that he wasn't on the field for the last interception that Tua threw in the Buffalo game that sealed the deal, because he had to come out due to injury on that play. Waddle's been out for 2 weeks. Mostert's been out for 2 weeks. Achane has spent part of the season on the injured reserve. All three of their edge rushers are gone. They pulled Melvin Ingram off the street and are plugging him in at edge rusher. Their left guard has been out for extended portion of the season. Their two top corners have missed time this season with Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard. They're just so injured that I can kind of explain away the Dolphin total collapse at the end of the season, other than like them blowing the 14-point lead in 3 minutes against the Titans. There's no reason the Dolphins should be playing this game this weekend. This was supposed to be the Dolphins' first home playoff game since Y2K. Since January of 2000 was the last time the Dolphins played a home playoff game, and they deserved to win that AFC East. They blew it at the end, and it sucks for them. But the season's already a wash at this point for the Dolphins, because I don't know if Tua's under the pressure or not, but his entire offense is hurt, and they're going on the road to play Kansas City. Like, maybe the defense bails them out, but their defense sucks. And Melvin Ingram is their starting edge rusher. So, it's less pressure for Tua and just bad luck. It's just really bad luck.
Yeah, I'm going to rebut something you said earlier. So Sean McDermott, you're right. I think he'd only be under pressure if the Steelers beat him, because it's a 7-2. But when it comes to Mike McCarthy, so Jerry Jones actually dispelled the level of pressure on his coach going into this game. Mike McCarthy, it sounds like his job is pretty secure. Now, if you told me that the Cowboys went in there and got beat 45-7 or something like that, okay, then gloves are off. Anything can happen at that point. But if they lose this game, I think McCarthy is safe. It would just all come down to, again, how do they lose this game? If it's 45-7, or it's a close game, but McCarthy is the one that ultimately loses the game, maybe he calls a timeout at the wrong time, then sure. But it sounds like Jerry Jones is very comfortable. He was asked about like Harbaugh rumors and like what kind of pressure that McCarthy was going into this game. And he's like, no, I think his track record speaks for himself. We win double-digit wins every year that he's been here. One of the better offenses in the league. I think we're fine. So I'm just going to say that I think McCarthy is safe.
So it's interesting. And the reason I specifically pointed out the Packers game is because I think most of us agree the Cowboys are the second best team in the NFC this year, right? I think that's probably true.
I think that the Rams have gotten close to them. Like the Rams, I think, is our interesting discussion. And I mentioned last week that I thought that Green Bay has a chance in this game. Now, I know they're 7.5-point underdogs, sure, but I see a path for the Green Bay Packers to win this game. If their young wide receiving weapons are healthy, I think they can make this game a very competent shootout. And if that happens, then I'm open to any form of possibility in this final outcome. Dallas is 2, but it's not a deep field.
Yeah, so if the Cowboys win this game, they will make it to the second round they'll essentially be third place in the NFC this season. If they win this game, they will essentially be the third place team, because even if they lose in the divisional round, they were the 2 seed. I don't think most people are going to say that the Bucs were better than the Cowboys this year, even if they both lose in the same round.
If the Lions advance and the Lions go to the NFC Championship game by beating the Cowboys, then the Lions are the second best team, because the Lions would also say we beat them before in the regular season, just the refs screwed us.
Yeah, the Cowboys were the second best team in the regular season, and then they would end up finishing third place in the NFC that year. So I don't think that is so much of a disappointment that they would fire Mike McCarthy, because again, they, like you said, they've gone 12-5 each of his 3 seasons that he's been in Dallas, which is a little cyclical that you've gone 12-5 every year with Mike McCarthy. It's just like, oh, I guess this is who we are now, but it's been a progression. They lost in the first round to the 49ers in 2021. Lost in the second round, well, again, to the 49ers in 2022. And so this year, if they lose to the 49ers in the NFC Championship game, that's going to be another step on the ladder of improvement for the Cowboys. They went from being the 5th best team in the NFC to the 3rd best team in the NFC to now they make the jump to the 2nd best team in the NFC.
Yeah.
Maybe they never get over the hump to number 1, but you're at least showing market improvement year over year.
I should add, though, he was there during the Andy Dalton year with Dak. I do throw that injury out when grading Mike McCarthy overall, right? Because that's just not fair to
Mhm.
him. But I would say, like, the year that they lost to the Niners, the first year was probably the year that they feel they should have won. The Jimmy Garoppolo year, he throws like a bad interception. They have a chance to win it late. They don't because they just, again, Dak loses sense of where the clock is. I mentioned with Tua, like pressure on players. Now, I don't think this is like overwhelming pressure by any means, but I think it's a fun narrative pressure. Matthew Stafford returning to Detroit. Detroit fans that were at all frustrated with Matthew Stafford's tenure with them, long tenure with them, and even claimed his Super Bowl as their own. If he goes to Detroit and lays an egg, I feel like a lot of Lions fans will feel vindicated in saying what they said about Matthew Stafford for years. With all due respect, ultimately, he was a Jaquaski Tart interception away from not winning that Super Bowl with the Rams when it came down to it. So if he goes into Detroit and loses to the Lions, I think that would be a bad look. I'll also throw out Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's fighting for his next contract, and I think that he has a lot of pressure going into this game with the Eagles. Like, if he doesn't look good, if he doesn't light up this horrible secondary that the Eagles have, then the Bucs are still looking for their next quarterback, and Baker Mayfield doesn't get potentially another 3 to 4 year deal like he was hoping for.
If Baker wins this game, he's going to get the contract. That feels pretty certain at this point. If he wins this game on Wild Card Weekend, he gets the contract. If he loses the game, he still might get the contract. But if he wins, there's no way they're gonna move on from
and if
him
I'm going to
after
mention
that.
Matthew Stafford, I got to mention Jared Goff because similarly, he's had under pressure against his former head coach and Sean McVay, who said, "You're not good enough. I'm trading you away."
Well, that was the undertone of the whole thing, which we were kind of, we were bouncing between Cowboys and the Bills, and then we went to the Eagles, and then Tua. We went through the list of people. The undertone of all of this is like, God, it must be so pressure packed to be the Lions, man. Just so pressure packed. Because I've been through a similar experience to the Lions last year. I was here in Sacramento for the game that broke the longest playoff drought in the history of the National Basketball Association. Like, I don't know if the players felt the pressure or not, but it was just a wild environment. It was so intense going into that first playoff game at your home building after a long, long drought. I don't know if the Lions are feeling the pressure necessarily, but just for my sake, watching them, I feel like that must be so pressure packed. Playing your first home playoff game in 30 years, playing it against the quarterback who's going to get a rousing standing ovation when they announce him at the start of the game. I feel pressure just sitting here thinking about it. I don't know how the
You think
Lions
he's
or
going to
Man
get an
Campbell are
ovation?
reacting to it. Absolutely.
I
I don't
don't
know if
know,
they'll do
man.
the
Like,
full.
just because it's their day. It's their day. It's their first home game. Gloves are off, man. Like, if this was a regular season week 5 game, I think you're right. They would probably give him that standing ovation. This is playoffs. This is win or go home. If he's the person that sends them home, he's going to be the biggest villain in Detroit. Yeah, like, I don't think he's going to get an ovation, at
So
least on this
before
day.
when he runs out of the tunnel for pregame warmups, they will. Well, actually, no. It'll be interesting because they'll run out while the Lions are coming out, so they'll kind of like sneak off to the side, probably. But when he comes out of the tunnel the first time to warm up, the smattering of people who will see him will cheer for him. Because you're right, they might
Golf
not do a
claps.
whole
It's going to
ceremony.
be golf claps. I think at this point, just given that, again, it's more about the Lions than it is about Stafford in
Yeah,
this game.
that's the tough part. Yeah, that's the tough part. It's like they won't do a whole and returning to Detroit for his first game. They won't do that, I assume, because it's a playoff game. But yeah, there's not going to be any booze. I'll tell you that. There's not going to be booze for Matthew
No, but
Stafford in
that's also
Detroit.
because Detroit isn't Philadelphia, right? Detroit isn't New York.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
he's going to have his jersey retired at that stadium. Yeah, he is the greatest quarterback in that franchise's history, and they will love him. And they also
Although
just happen to play him.
Although if Jared Goff continues at this pace and wins him a couple playoff games, you're going to tell me that people wouldn't hold Jared Goff in a higher regard than Matthew Stafford, even if the tenure is going to be largely shorter, just given where they
Yeah,
were
I
at
was
their
gonna
age.
say it depends how it ends with Goff in Detroit. Does it end by Detroit trying to make an upgrade at quarterback, or does it end with similar to Stafford, just an amicable parting of ways? Because the Lions fans kind of got it when Stafford left. They were like, "Yeah, Patricia dude's an asshole. We totally get it. Just go do your thing, man. They kind of got it at the end, but I'm just Detroit. I feel like has to be under a level of pressure, regardless of what happens. That game is just going to be amazing. There's going to be so many storylines, so much stakes involved. The game is essentially a toss up, so it might be super entertaining and have drama at the end. Like,
Yeah.
that Ram Lions game is going to be so batshit crazy.
Now, normally I wouldn't say the 7 seed is under any pressure at all, but do you think there's a level of pressure with the Steelers just to not get blown out? I feel like they want to look competitive at least. They don't want to look like they don't belong. Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like there's a certain level of pressure to look like professionals in this playoff game and not get run off the field. Although I guess the TJ Watt injury kind of alleviates a level of pressure from this game for them because they're like, okay, we're down our biggest horse. So, we can't really do much with that. Cleveland, Texans, it feels like the Texans are playing with house money. It also feels like Cleveland's playing with a little bit of house money too. So I don't think anyone's under really pressure in that game. Although I guess you would say probably Kevin Stefanski is probably his biggest game since moving on for Baker Mayfield. So like probably a little pressure, but not as much, not significantly as much as like these other situations. I would say maybe a little pressure for Jordan Love. First playoff game, he wants to look good. He's a quarterback following a great quarterback in Aaron Rodgers in the same way that Aaron Rodgers wanted to look good in his first set of playoff games following Brett Favre. I think Jordan Love wants to look good in these games. And I think the Cowboys are a defense that he can exploit at least. So I do think that it's worth noting. I think Jordan Love has a certain microcosm of pressure in this game.
Yeah, Jordan Love and it's just because they're both the 7 seed from the NFC, but Jordan Love very much has like a Geno Smith quality to it where it's like, don't worry, you're going to be back next year. You've proven that you are worthy. Don't worry, just let's go out there and do our best. That's kind of the philosophy there with Jordan Love. It's like you've earned the new contract. It's fine. We're going to keep you around. Just let's go out there and try and win.
He gets the blanket of it's your first playoff start, so we're not going to kill you if you look awful. They're going to handle him with kid gloves going into this game. So the pressure is not really there. Green Bay is not really a high pressure city either way, or a high pressure organization in the sense that, they're a very loyal franchise. I just wanted to add, like, shout out to LaFleur. This is a good season for him, right? Even being in this playoff spot, coming off of the Aaron Rodgers year, people were like, how good is LaFleur? It turns out he's pretty good. I don't know if he's great, but he's pretty good.
They moved on from Aaron Rodgers, plugged in Jordan Love, and ended up exactly the same team as last year. I think that's a success. And when I say exactly the same team as last year, I mean a team that was 8-8 that had to play a home playoff game against their division rival to clinch a playoff spot. And if they lost, they would have missed the playoffs. Literally exactly the same situation as last year when they played the Lions in week 18 and they win, they get in the playoffs. If they lose, they don't. They had the exact same situation again this year. And then they beat the Bears in week 18 because it's the Bears. The Packers have won 10 consecutive games against the Bears. They were always going to win that game against the Bears. But regardless of the point, like, they got rid of Aaron Rodgers, plugged in Jordan Love, and they were exactly the same team as last year. 8-8 through 16 games and had a win and in playoff game in 18 on their home field. Exact same team as last year. And now they get to play a playoff game. Again, they're 7.5-point underdogs, but they give the Cowboys the feistiest matchup of any of those teams that could have been in the 7 seed. So yeah, pressure doesn't really apply to them. I don't think pressure really applies to Kansas City either. Like, if Kansas City is losing this game, that's gonna suck because it means Kansas City then has to go on the road twice. But
I didn't even think about them.
I don't conceive of a world where they're gonna lose.
I guess because I thought, you're right. I don't see them losing to Miami. But okay, let's play devil's advocate here. If, let's say, the offense looks as bad as it has been the last couple months of the season, grand scheme of the numbers is still relatively a top 10 offense, more of an average offense, but it's bad by Kansas City standards. There's going to be a lot of changes this offseason, right? Those wide receivers, they're under pressure. No drops. If they have any drops in a playoff game and it's the reason they lose, learn to speak Chinese, buddy, right? We're going to get some of those memes. Matt Nagy, under pressure, right? Matt Nagy's probably going to get the shit can if he ends up coaching a horrible playoff series. Is Taylor Swift under the most pressure this weekend for NFL wildcard weekend?
I thought, okay. I thought I was about to lose my shit if you had said Mahomes right there. I was like, is Mahomes under pressure? I'm like, it's Patrick fucking Mahomes. Anyways, Travis Kelce's under pressure for sure because he has had a tough second half to the season, and people have gone from double teaming him to just kind of like, do what you got to do kind of thing. The receivers just don't drop passes. You're all gone at the end of the season anyways. You might as well just like try your best to win while you're here because for a lot of those guys, it is going to be their last chance, except Rasheed. Rasheed is the only one who can stay. But Sky Moore, he's going to be gone. Richie James, he's going to be gone. Tony, Valdez Scantling, all those guys are going to be gone at the end of the season. So Rasheed will stick around. Kelsey will stick around. Maybe Justin Watson can stay. But like other than that, they'll rotate out the quarterback room. Yeah, I don't know what to think of this for Kansas City's point. Like you said, Kansas City is going to win this game, but I said the same thing about the Raider game, and then they had a strip six and a pick six and somehow couldn't generate enough points to catch the Raiders. So
there's going to be changes in Kansas City. And at the end of the day, there's going to be changes. So there's pressure in the sense there's job security on the line for someone on this team. Again, like the wide receivers, a lot of them might be gone anyway, but if they look bad, continue to look bad in the playoffs, because, hey, Tony, for all we know, like he could have a performance like he did in the Super Bowl, right? He gets the punt return and ends up taking it almost to the house. That could change how people view you in Kansas City. You could go from the zero to the hero quickly. Let's run through the list real quick again. So I mentioned Sirianni. You mentioned Sean McDermott. You mentioned Mike McCarthy. We mentioned Tua. Tua's under pressure. A little bit of Matthew Stafford, a little bit of Jared Goff, if nothing else for the narrative. Baker Mayfield under pressure for his next contract. The wide receivers of Kansas City, as we just noted. A lot of pressure for the Lions in general in their first home playoff game going into this year. Jordan Love in his first playoff game a little bit, but not that much. Anyway, guys, well, hey, let us know, who do you think is under the most pressure going into Super Wildcard Weekend? Like to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on all our social medias. From Juju Kyle, stay safe, happy, and healthy. We'll see you next time.